All right, it's time again for the SMC Journal podcast, the show that's all about performance engineering in today's modern IT world. I am Scott Moore, your host, and very thrilled that you would join us today. We've got a good show. Tricentis Neoload 9.0 has been released. It is a major version release with some big feature sets in it, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I've brought a guest on, and we're going to be demonstrating what those features look like in the product. So you're going to be glad you joined us. Before we get into that, let's talk about the sponsors that make this show happen. This episode is sponsored by Micro Focus and the LoadRunner Solutions family. That includes LoadRunner Professional, Enterprise, Cloud, and Developer. You know, performance matters. Did you know that LoadRunner Solutions have the largest community of practitioners in the world? Join that community at community.microfocus.com, scan the QR code, and check out the LoadRunner family page on performance engineering, as well as their YouTube playlist that we've got links for in the show notes on smcjournal.com, as well as YouTube. This episode is sponsored by Performance Lab. They're a provider of premier load and performance testing services for enterprises in all industries. They focus on a robust methodology, tools, and the experienced engineers that know what they're doing. Since 2008, they have built a reputation for reliability worldwide. BoomQ is their own innovative performance testing platform. However, they also consult around many industry standard load testing tools like JMeter, LoadRunner, and others. Find out more at performancelabus.com. This episode is sponsored by StormForge. The StormForge platform focuses on AI-powered software designed to help DevOps teams release with confidence and help your IT leaders realize the promise of cloud native. That means faster innovation, higher quality, resiliency, scalability, and efficiency. Find out more at stormforge.io. Thank you, sponsors, for supporting the performance engineering community and this show specifically. Now, let's get right into the interview with Bryan Cole of Tricentis. Hey, Bryan Cole, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Mr. Moore. How are you?
I'm awesome. Welcome to the SMC Journal podcast. I've been wanting you on here for a while.
My pleasure to attend.
So for those of you who do not know, Bryan Cole is the Director of Customer Engineering for Tricentis. Bryan, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
So, hello, everyone. My name is Bryan Cole. I am a performance nerd. I have been in the performance testing space for decades at this point. My journey started with CompuWare way back in the day when somebody came to me one Thursday afternoon and said, "Hey, do you know anything about performance testing?" To which I said, "No." And they said, "Great, here's the manuals. You go on site as a consultant on Monday." So I read the documentation and had no clue, but really got into how do I build a protocol? How do I support this? What are the results reporting? Doing all of the fun work. If for those of you who've been around long enough when these tools kind of really stunk, you had to be in at midnight and handhold that tool for a couple hours and then go home and sleep and then come in the afternoon and do some reporting and analysis. Those were the days. The tools have gotten a lot better, and I'm thrilled to be here at Tricentis now, because after CompuWare, I went through the entire Mercury, HP, HPE, Micro Focus journey, and now I'm excited to be here pushing Neoload.
Awesome. So for those who may not know, how do you interact with the rest of the folks that work with Neoload at Tricentis? So you're not a product manager or a product marketing manager. You kind of fit somewhere in between all these roles, but you interact with them. Is that right?
It is, and it's an interesting role that I'm in. So I am not a sales employee. I do not have a quota that I need to pursue. I am interested in helping our customers get more value from their existing investments, whether that's you're investigating acquiring Neoload and you want to use it, whether that is you already own it and you have some technical questions. My background has given me a lot of knowledge about containerization and Kubernetes. I deal with a lot of those types of questions. I do a lot of interaction with the PM organization in terms of what are the trends that I see from our customer base and the future state of what performance testing and performance engineering should be. These are all aspects of my job, and when I'm not interfacing with customers or internally to tell them my opinions about things, I am doing evangelism and advocacy. Performance testing is quite possibly the most fun type of QA that I can imagine. It is by far my favorite type of test to run, and I love the space.
Awesome. Well, today I want to talk about this exciting news that Neoload major version release 9.0 has come out, and it's got some pretty interesting features that we wanted to mention here, not the least of which is something that's been talked about for quite some time, which is a browser-based user that you can record using the browser, kind of like a Micro Focus True Client type of initiative. Can you talk about that? Because this is exciting news for everybody.
Absolutely. So RealBrowser is the new technology. We are releasing this and making it available to the entirety of our customer base. So if you already have some web virtual users and you've upgraded to the new license model that we put in place back in January of 2022, you get it. No additional software purchases or anything. There's just that license migration to the new model. The RealBrowser platform allows us to support a number of different use cases. And your analogy to True Client is pretty spot on because it is a very similar concept. What we have the advantage of here with Neoload is that by entering the market later, we are able to take advantage of substantially better technology to drive this type of use case, which gives us a virtual user footprint substantially less than what you'll see in the LoadRunner platform. The key use cases that we see, there are, of course, the absolute greenfield. I have never done performance testing before. I have no idea what I'm doing. This gives you a test script that is very, very easy to understand. You'll see the click on the button, type in the text field, all of the kind of very basic, very elementary, easy to understand user interface interactions that you would expect from a browser-driven test script. When we talk about more sophisticated use cases, we at Tricentis have been pitching integration into the DevOps toolchain. Performance isn't a feature you bolt on at the end. It's an inherent characteristic of the application. Please get this right as early as possible. Do as much performance as early as possible, whether that's through JMeter, whether that's through the Neoload CLI, whether that's using the full Neoload platform. We don't care as long as you're doing something. And making that easier to integrate into the DevOps toolchain has been a good initiative for us, but it's bumped straight into the problem of as the velocity of that chain increases and you have more and more releases coming out faster and faster, you may need to update or create test assets to test these new builds that are coming out at blazing speeds. And the idea behind spending a week building out all of your test scripts is no longer viable. You may have a nightmarishly difficult application to create a user path for. Sometimes that involves multiple levels of correlation. Sometimes it's just incredibly complex and difficult to deal with. Single-page applications offer their own new, unique brand of problems in terms of a protocol-based script. With Neoload 9.0 and RealBrowser, now it is very much like a functional test. You see the button, you click the button, the 200 parameterizations you might have needed to do in correlating all those data elements behind the scenes are now no longer required, and your script just plays back. And this gives you that velocity that you need to really integrate into that DevOps toolchain. There are some other use cases as well about understanding the difference between user response time versus transaction response time. We've always given you transaction response time, but true end user response time with dynamic elements on the page being requested by executing JavaScript can be a very interesting metric to begin to collect and understand how your pages are actually rendering and what that user experience is going to look like, as well as some other cool goodies beyond the scope of just RealBrowser, things like integration into Datadog to support our APM customers out there who use Datadog, who are also Neoload customers. We are going to supply a very functional out-of-the-box integration between those two platforms that allows you to see not only all of the Datadog elements that you're collecting in your Neoload reporting, but push your Neoload reporting into Datadog itself.
So this is amazing. We've got a browser-based virtual user technology, and then we've got Datadog integration for observability. So these are major changes. But you mentioned the whole Neoload platform. So we've got Neoload GUI, which is more of an like on-prem install on one computer, and you script and you can do all the things. But then there's Neoload Web. How does RealBrowser work with Neoload Web?
So the Neoload platform consists of kind of three main pieces. The first is the Neoload controller, which is, like you said, is a desktop-based installation package. And that desktop install can be a full-featured performance engineering platform for you. You can create your scenarios, you can execute your scenarios, you can do reporting from them. That was the legacy and the history of Neoload. Neoload Web allows us to extend that to a centralized management platform and gives us this grand view of everything that's going on in terms of multiple teams executing performance testing, support for the development organizations and the CLIs, everything that's going on from these other sources of performance that are coming into play. The whole context of Neoload Web is, let's capture all of this quality that's taking place. All of this work that's happening behind the scenes should be centrally located, put together into a single coherent view, allow all of the end users to see and understand this data, but not because we want them to log into Neoload Web. There's no message that I could imagine that would be more offensive to a development community than saying, yes, this will be great, just log into this Tricentis platform that is not designed for you, designed for the performance engineers. Just, it's not a great view. Instead, let's use the reporting capabilities that we built into the platform and publish the reports directly into your CI system. Likewise, if you're an operations manager of some sort, you don't want to log into Neoload Web, you want to log into your APM tool. Let's log into Dynatrace, let's log into Datadog, view your performance results there in the context of the solutions you're already familiar with, and really make it easy for people to understand what they're looking at.
I love that. I love being able to view what I want to view, whatever my role is in the tool that I'm comfortable with, and sharing that information, directionally either way. And also from a developer standpoint, with the CLI, being able to execute this very easily in any of my CI pipelines, and get that interface going, whereas I don't have to use Neoload GUI to get that started. So
Exactly so. And the other kind of key aspect of this as well is that Neoload Web isn't an additional purchase. If you are a current Neoload customer, you have access to the Neoload Web platform. And like any good software package, you may run it on premises, doing your own installation, or in our cloud, as you see fit. If you are going to run it on premises, we only offer it as a container-based install. So there will be some Kubernetes knowledge that you're going to require, and that's probably a good reason to talk to somebody like me here at Tricentis. We will absolutely help you on that journey.
awesome. So this 9.0 is, I mean, it's a big deal, and I don't know how much you can share about the product roadmap as we go forward from here, but seems to me that enterprises have certain needs for a lot more protocols than just web, and Neoload has been adding protocol support. They've been filling in holes that the enterprise has needed that they could only get from some other products out there that were considered enterprise performance testing tools. Are there anything that you can share that would tell us that this is going to continue with Neoload, that it's going to continue to fill in those holes and those gaps that the enterprise needs?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that we're doing on that front. So certainly there are a number of customers that are asking for things like terminal emulation support. This is something that we are looking towards integrating into the product in a upcoming release. There are a number of other enhancements that we're doing as Tricentis looks at our expanding software portfolio, and we look at what are the types of quality flows or business processes that we need to be able to support easily and seamlessly. And when we talk about the data that we're collecting from a performance perspective, from a functional perspective, from a test management perspective, these are different aspects, facets of a gemstone. When you twist the gemstone, you're looking at different parts of it, but it's all the same rock. And we really want to make it easy for our customers to begin to understand what shape that rock is actually in, and give you a lot of visibility and insight into it. So there's going to be new product offerings that we're building internally to support this integration of the data elements, to make it very seamless and easy for you to move from one software product to the other. Like Microsoft did with the Office suite, we're going to start making all our products look and feel the same. The menus will be in the same place. They'll be named consistently just to dramatically simplify user onboarding and the whole training aspect of things, we're also leaning heavily into observability. Observability is different than monitoring. Monitoring, you kind of got to know what you're looking for before something manifests, and hopefully you caught the right thing. Whereas observability is watching the system and surfacing the things that are important for you. And it's a very different paradigm. So integrating into solutions like OpenTelemetry, these are things that we are currently investigating as well.
Awesome. So, I know what some of my viewers are thinking. Hey, these are great things that you're talking about. Let's see it. Now, my understanding is you've got a short demo where you're kind of going to go over some of this with us. Is that right?
I sure do. Here, let me trigger that for you right now.
Okay, let's go to that video.
All right, so let's look at RealBrowser. And to understand the RealBrowser user path, we should really look at the traditional user paths that you're already familiar with. A traditional user path operates at the protocol level, is sending and receiving HTTP requests and responses, and renders the page based on that information. And we can go through the HTML content and extract values. A common process that we follow is extracting a correlated value. So here in this case, a form authorization token arrives. It's this dynamic value that was seen at runtime when I recorded the application. We need to catch the value that's being returned when we replay this script and parameterize it. Common activity, but in the context of a DevOps toolchain where velocity is the single most important factor that you need, even with all of the helper functions we've added into Neoload, this can take quite a bit of time. And sometimes the speed requirements of a DevOps toolchain necessitate moving faster even than what we're capable of with Neoload. Likewise, when we are looking at single-page applications or other extremely complex applications that have many layers of correlation that are constantly changing or evolving depending on the context of the application and the state that it's in, these can be extremely difficult to create in Neoload at a protocol-based level. Instead, we've introduced RealBrowser. And RealBrowser allows me to follow the exact same user path, but instead of interacting at the HTTP level by sending a post message to the server, now I'm going to do things like click on the Submit a Report button. And when I look at how we're identifying all of these different elements that we're interacting with, we're doing that by looking at the style sheet of how the web page was actually rendered by the browser itself. In this case, I'm going to select a checkbox based on the being in the second column of a group in the first list item with the attached label and the first input within that label. This gives us a tremendous flexibility to allow us to uniquely identify any element on the page and interact with exactly the right thing as we execute. Like any user path, when I validate this user path, it will execute and allow me to see and understand the state of this particular test run. Now, unlike at a protocol level where it simply replays in the background and is sending and receiving the messages, we are going to render a browser object and execute the scenario inside of this browser object. And as we execute, you can see that it's highlighting the individual field, typing in the values, typing in the description, selecting that second column and the first checkbox within it, and clicking the home button eventually to return back home. At no point during this scenario did I have to do any correlation, nor was there any need for me to adjust anything other than perhaps some of the recorded think times, just so that this demo video isn't egregiously long. With Neoload, we also have the ability to mix and match the populations together. A traditional user path and a RealBrowser user path can be seamlessly mixed into a population or leveraged in a scenario as you see fit. And this is really designed to allow you to collect not just the transaction response time, but also the true end user response time. What I mean by that is when we are clicking on a link in RealBrowser, there are a number of different things that are taking place. First, the application may get a redirect, but eventually it sends the request for an HTML page to the server receives that request, begins processing the response, and then it sends back that response. And when that response has been received by Neoload, that is the end of what we call transaction response time, the traditional protocol-based metric that we use to determine how performant an application is. Increasingly, with complex JavaScript and other on-load events, the web page itself may send additional requests for content, may dynamically flex or change, and the responsiveness of how long it takes to render all of that content and other information is an increasingly useful and interesting metric to understand the true end user response time. So now, with RealBrowser, all of the processing of loading the web page content, the document object model creation, and the content load and the content complete, as well as any triggered on-load events that you may have in your JavaScript files, will be captured as part of the end user response time. This offers a tremendous new view of the performance of your application in the context of load on the system, and we're very excited to introduce this feature in Neoload 9.0. We've introduced a ton of other capability as well, such as the Datadog integration, many other features that our customers have been asking for. I can't encourage you enough to reach out to your Tricentis team. We are here to help and would love to show you more about RealBrowser.
Bryan, thank you for sharing that video with us.
My
I
pleasure.
want to talk about a couple of other things before we stop talking. We've got events coming up, and as in historically, Neoload and Neodis, the company that owned Neoload before the acquisition to Tricentis, they always put on a Performance Advisory Council annual meeting. I don't know what you would call that, a
Yep.
summit meeting, I guess. And I hosted a virtual one last year. Is this going to continue for this year, 2022?
It absolutely is. So it's coming up very shortly. We're just waiting on the official signing of some contracts before I give people the dates, but by the time this video releases, that'll be all set in stone. The Performance Advisory Council is a collection of individuals who are involved in the performance community, who are thinking about what the future of this space is going to look like. What is the future of performance engineering? What is the trends that we're starting to see in the industry? And we get together as a collection of experts in this field, and we talk amongst ourselves. And we present to one another, we discuss these trends, we have an open communication of how this is going to work, and then we make that content available online to our user community after the fact. So the pack is currently going to happen towards the end of this year, hopefully in October, and that will let us get together, discuss all of this, and the theme of this year's event is, of course, observability and performance. It's very hard to do performance testing without watching the system behind the scenes, so we really want to hammer down on this key aspect of doing performance engineering well.
In contradiction to last year where we had a virtual and everybody could join up and watch these sessions, it was more of a presentation style like you would get at a conference. This is going to be more of what it was in the past, where people are getting together, having discussions and talking about things and discovering things, but it's a limited audience, right? It's
Very
few
much so.
people,
It is
so it's not
open
like everybody's going to
to
get into this. You can't watch this, it's not virtual. But will you share any of this after the fact as video footage of any kind that we can watch?
absolutely. I am advocating entirely that we are going to record everything and make all of that presentation material available to everybody after the presentations are concluded.
Awesome. So we'll make sure that we follow up on this show after the pack and find out what was discovered, because we may find the meaning of life. Who knows? Uh, so I want to mention one other event that's happening very soon on September the 29th, on Thursday. You are going to be joining myself and James Pulley in Atlanta for an official Performance Tour Roadshow event. And so on that note, I mean, I'll be talking, and me and James will be doing our traditional, flashy, shiny entertainment. But you're going to be there to share some information as well. What will you be talking about at that meetup?
I am going to review the future of Neoload. What are we going to see in the product in the next 6 months to a year of our development plans and strategy going forward? So the future enhancements to RealBrowser, the refinements to Datadog, the completely new features. For those of you who viewed the World Quality Report back in January, we'll talk a little bit about Project Rachel that is still ongoing and what's happening on that front. There's a lot of exciting things that we're doing in this space that are going to hopefully change how people interact with this type of software and the problem of executing a performance scenario and getting meaningful results out of it.
Okay, I'm excited now. So anybody who's interested in the future of Neoload, it's going to be in Atlanta at the Tricentis headquarters in Buckhead. I'll have links to that on the show notes, and also I'll make sure that we share graphics and all that stuff with maps and where it's going to be so everybody can be there. That's going to be September the 29th. Bryan, so good to have you on the show today, and hope you're always welcome to come back and give us updates on what's happening with Neoload or yourself or the pack. We'll definitely follow up after the pack.
That'd be great. I'm
All right.
always happy to be here, Scott.
Thank you. Okay, so what do you think about the new feature sets of Tricentis Neoload 9.0? I'd like to know what you think. Before we talk about how you can reach me for your feedback, if you want to know more about that meetup in Atlanta on September 29th, 2022, here's a screenshot for you. If you go to theperformancetour.com, scroll down to events, it should be the only one that's showing currently, and it will take you to this page that will tell you more about the exact location, and then what's going to be discussed. There's actually a registration form on this page, very simple. You just fill it out and click submit, and then I will be able to count you as somebody who's coming. I'm the one ordering the food. I want to make sure that I order enough to include you if you're going to be there. Now, if you're watching this after September 29th, 2022, sorry that we missed you. Make sure that you get into the next Performance Tour Meetup once it's announced, and hopefully we'll be back in Atlanta very soon. So I'd like to know what you think about what we talked about today. I'm very easy to reach at scottmoore.consulting. You can also reach me through social media, through LinkedIn. There's a link to my profile, as well as Twitter, Load Tester. You can also email me at help@scottmoore.consulting. If you like this type of content, make sure that you subscribe to the video page on YouTube so that we can know that you do like what we're talking about, and it helps me know that I'm on the right track. So I appreciate everybody for joining me today. We'll see you on the next episode. This is Scott Moore for the SMC Journal saying thank you for watching once again, and bye-bye.